if you can hear me and you can hear the machines. Turn that off and check it out. Hey there, welcome everybody to another studio live stream. Let's see here. I believe we have audio, it sounds like. Let me know in the chat if you can hear everything, if everything sounds okay. I believe we should be okay, but just want to double check. Okay, that's all that is. Great. Welcome to the first studio live stream of 2026. Happy New Year, everybody. If you're joining in, feel free to jump in the chat, say hi, say where you're joining in from. Always nice to hear where we've got people around the world joining us. So today we are going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff, but particularly the Roland TR1000. It's been a month and just wanted to chat a little bit about it, walk through it, answer any questions that you have, because I keep getting asked a lot of questions offline about specific things about the machine. And so love to be able to walk through any questions that you guys might have, anything I can show you. I've had it for a month and I still have not been through everything that the machine does. So there will be some things that I just don't know the answer to, but maybe we can fumble through them on here, but I'm gonna try to answer whatever questions I can. Should be able to get through most of it because I think I have a pretty good grasp of it, including things I like, things I don't like, things that need to be fixed, things that are amazing about it. And yeah, we can chat about that. First and foremost, thank you guys all for joining in and for the support of my release that came out right before the new year. Very happy to announce that it went to #1 on the Beatport techno release chart, which was kind of a surprise from my first release in a while, and first release with a new format as far as recording things in a particular live way. So it was great to get the support. So thank you guys for everybody who purchased the release. And yeah, so it was pretty exciting. On Christmas Day, we had the release was the #1 peak time techno release on Beatport, and all 6 of the tracks were all in the top 50 as individual tracks. So it was pretty cool. And then as far as the global overall releases for all genres on Beatport, made it all the way up to #20, I believe, across all genres. So that was great. I appreciate it. Yeah, so thank you guys so much. One more quick thing as well. The January version of my performance course is going to be starting tomorrow. So if you're interested in doing that, there's a link in the description of this video. So you can check out everything that's in the outline of the course, see if it's something for you, and go ahead and get signed up. There's a good discount right now. And this will be the first one of 2026 and should be great. There's already quite a few people from all over the world signed up for it. So very excited to get this moving, get this next course going. If you're interested in learning how to perform improvised live electronic music. So anyway, let's see what's going on in the chat. Cool, you can hear. That's a good thing. Sounding good. Sweet. Michigan, Berlin, sweet. Welcome everybody. Koblenz, where is that? Not familiar. Let me know. That's awesome. Happy New Year's, James. Good to see you in there. An alumni of one of my courses. Jeff, what's going on from Oklahoma? Jeff from Synthskins. If you've seen his stuff, it's pretty cool. He makes vinyl overlays for all of your synths and groove boxes and all that stuff that can be done up in all sorts of ways. So check him out if you want. Oslo, Norway. Sweet. Good to see you there. Great release. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It was a lot of fun. We can talk a little bit about that and how we did it as well, which was pretty cool, but we'll talk about that a little later on. One thing we want to go over today is this guy right here, which is the Roland TR1000. And it is, we'll do like the quick overview, and then I'll go a little bit more into detail on the specifics. I think that my personal experience, now obviously everybody's experience is going to be different with any machine that's out there, but my personal experience with the TR1000 has been, I would say, a 9.9 out of 10. It's like, it is a phenomenal machine. I don't want to say it was worth the 40-year wait from Roland, but I will say that as Roland devices go, this is my favorite that I've had. I'm usually not a huge fan of the Roland workflow. The Roland workflow can be a bit convoluted and complicated and super menu divey and not super well implemented for all of the capabilities. Their machines always sound really great, but there's always some sort of issue. Like if you've ever tried to navigate like the MC707 or even the TR-8S, if you want to change anything in the guts of it, then it gets really complicated to go menu and menu and menu, and you've only got like one knob to adjust things, and so it just gets really confusing. So they fixed that in this. I mean, they didn't get it to 100%, but they really fixed a ton of the workflow issues that they've had with other devices. This is the first Roland device of the modern era that I have really gotten along with as far as the workflow goes. It's been, like Roland devices way back in the day, like the SH-101 and, the older drum machines, the 909, 808, things like that. They were great because it was kind of like knob or button per function. It was really easy to navigate and do those things. Then they got into the world of menu diving digital stuff, and it became, they didn't have the best, they didn't have the best people that were designing their user interfaces. This time, if you guys have listened to me for any length of time, you'll know that one of my favorite books is called Steal Like an Artist, where it's just take influences from everybody else and combine those things together to make your own unique thing. And I think that you can see that they definitely stole like an artist from some other people. The workflow much more resembles an electron, like a modern electron workflow, not the older kind of convoluted electron workflow, but the more modern one, which is great. I think they took some of the best features of that. It's not quite as well implemented as it is in the electron boxes, but it is a very well implemented machine. As far as, with the electron devices, you've got a screen that has 8 parameters on the screen. Right next to that, there's 8 knobs, and they always line up, so you know what that is. In this one, you've got a screen that has, 6 parameters on, whichever page you're on. You've got 6 parameters, and you've got 6 knobs below, and they line up. So if you're in the bottom right parameter, it's going to be the bottom right knob. So it just kind of makes sense. And where that's important is if you've ever used an MPC Live, they'll have those 4 knobs on the right side of the screen, and sometimes the parameters line up with those knobs, and sometimes they're across the bottom, and sometimes they're at different places on the screen, and there's never really any rhyme or reason to what they are. So there's always these kind of like fits and starts to the workflow. Whereas, with the Electron, where they always line up, and now with the TR-1000, how they always line up, it's really, it takes it to a level where it's like, okay, super intuitive, no matter which screen you go to. Another thing I love about this that's very much like the Electron workflow is that when you want to go to a page, it used to be in the old Roland workflows that it was like menu, scroll, select, scroll, select, scroll, select to get to the page you want to. Where with this, very much like the Electron ones, if you want to use the generator page, which is like the sound engine page, you just go to generator. If you want to go to the filter page, you just hit filter, and then you have all those parameters. Amp, you have all those parameters. Effects, you have all those parameters. So to be able to quickly get to the immediate area where you want to go and then have the parameters all line up and make sense, I found that this is really super fast for jamming on, and you want to change something up while you're jamming, and it's really quick and easy to dig right into it and just get to it right there, and you don't have to dive and dive and dive. That was my big thing with the TR8, TR8S. Why I had those for a short time and sold them was because it took a lot in the menu divey thing to set them up. They were super playable once you set them up. But then if you wanted to really dig in and change anything during the performance, it was impossible. Very awkward, small screen, a lot of menus. And so you were stuck with what you had pre-set up. Here you can do all of that same kind of pre-set up stuff that you would do on the TR8S. But if you want to get under the hood and change anything, it's really easy to do that. So let's say you didn't map a certain parameter to one of the knobs, but you wanted to use it. It's very easy to get to that parameter and go ahead and change it using these knobs over here. So you don't have to know 100% what you're going to be doing ahead of time before you even start in order to be able to get this set. Where with like the TR8S, you really needed to have a good picture of exactly how you wanted everything to work, because trying to modify that on the fly during a performance was really, really not smooth. Is the best way to say it. And so that's something that I think that they really fixed as far as the workflow goes. And they did that while they kept a lot of the great things about the TR8 and the faders, assignable knobs, some of the effects and things like that were really great about those. They've kind of re-implemented here. One thing that everybody talks about with this is the analog engines, which are phenomenal. I mean, they are what they are, but when I first heard about this device, I kind of thought that I kind of heard about it a little bit ahead of time, and I was like, oh, cool, they're gonna, issue a new analog drum machine. How cool, and that'll sound great and whatever. And that was kind of it. So I thought that was gonna be kind of the one trick was the analog engines. And in reality, those are just a very, very, very small part of what this has that's great. And so it goes much, much deeper than that, I guess, is the thing. And to be able to combine those pretty effortlessly, the analog engines with the analog circuit behavior engines and the samples and all of that kind of stuff, it just makes it just every new layer is just more and more powerful, where it's not just kind of the one thing. So that for me is what really struck me. I mean, I kind of thought this was going to be a great sounding drum machine, and it's actually turned out to be way more than that. I was watching one of the release events that they had at ADE in Amsterdam, and Nadia Straving and Kink were on stage, each with one of these, basically playing what would be the equivalent of an entire live set. And just recently, even over the last few weeks or last few days, I've been sitting down with just this and only turning it on, not the modular, no other gear, no other devices, and jamming around with this and messing around with things and being able to basically play an entire live set on this is 100% doable as a single device on its own, depending on the type of music you're going to do. Obviously, I mean, if it's sequencer based, leaning towards techno and house, things that are more sequencer based and that are more percussive, you could 100% do an entire show just on one thing, because with the sampling engine, you have the ability to play loops, time stretch, chop and edit and reconfigure those loops, and it's pretty easy to do that stuff on the fly, and we'll do a little bit of that in a little bit. But all of that, in addition to all of the great drum and percussion stuff that it does, makes it really, really, really playable. And it has things that it implemented really well, like master effects, like being able to have a master filter. So like, you know, I was just jamming on this before, but it's got an analog filter on the master. So just to be able to do things just for like build-ups and drops. It has a master analog drive circuit. So you can take that off and have it be clean. Turn it up just a little more. Have it be clean, or you can drive it all the way to crazy distortion levels. So it's, you know, to be able to have things that you can actually perform and play with, things that take your output signal and add, basically drive saturation, distortion to it, to make that output signal sound more polished, more mastered, if you will. Master compressor, if you're into that kind of thing, you can set up a compressor per channel. There's all kinds of things that it does that make it so that it's really, it could be a total standalone, play a whole show on it machine. I've seen a few videos showing up recently, which are kind of the implementation that I think makes the most sense for live performance, because this is a really big machine. So to travel with this is going to be hard, which means you have to take out some things out of your performance, out of your kit if you're going to be playing with this. Fortunately, it takes the place of a lot of things. But if you had this with a single multi-timbral groove box or sampler, I mean, just this setup here, like with the TR-1000 and the 1010 black box, is a fantastic setup, because you could have loops or stems or one shots that are being sequenced from something else on the black box, and have that go to multiple outputs if you had a mixer that you were using with it, or you just have it go out as it is into the TR-1000 and then out from the TR-1000. You could play a whole show like that, absolutely no problem at all. And you would miss, obviously, like the Nopper function that you get with, you know, having a modular rig with synths like that, or hands-on desktop modular synths. But if you wanted to be really tight and travel still relatively small, even with a big, huge machine like this, it's totally possible. So there's trade-offs, right? It wouldn't be able to do all of the stuff that it does, including the multiple analog circuits and all of that stuff, if it was smaller. So you've kind of got, the size is a necessary trade-off to the capability with this device. Now, hopefully, I would like to see them come up with, as they've done in the past, where they did like, you know, they did like the 606 version of things, or 626. So they had the lesser version of a flagship drum machine. I would love to see them at some point replace the TR-8S with, let's say, a TR-500, if you wanted to, whatever would be the scaled down version of this, and have it keep all of the functionality without the analog. So take out all of the cost and size and weight of the analog circuits for those people who that really isn't that important for them. And so you could maintain a lot of what this already has in a package that would be definitely smaller and lighter. So I think that would be, you know, a good thing for them to do at some point, and I would assume that they will at some point. That's just kind of, it's been something they've done in the past, and I could see them totally doing that now. Now, for those people who want all of the capabilities that this has, there's a lot of discussion about the price, and $2,700 is not cheap, especially for a drum machine. But again, if it was just a drum machine, or if it was just, you know, like an updated 909, I would say it's a total waste of money, and why would you ever spend that kind of money? But when you start to think about, you know, if you were to take a fully analog, you know, 909 and 808, then all of the analog circuit behavior, other drums that are in here, so 707, 727, 626, the CR78, all of those are built into this. So it's like, okay, well, that's already a whole bunch of drum machines. Then you have not super capable, but an existing set of kind of synthesis engines where you can create tonal stuff in this. You have all of the sampling. You have the ability to sample into it as well as load a bunch of samples into it and edit a bunch of that stuff. You have time stretching, which is fantastic. You have a lot of performance effects. You have analog effects. You have compressors. You have multi-level sequencers. Yeah, I mean, so to all of those things, and you think about all of the gear that you would need to have all of those things, and all of a sudden the price becomes, you know, I guess more understandable. I don't want to try to justify it because it's a lot of money and it's expensive and it's not a cheap machine, but I don't think it was ever designed to be. And I do think it's a little funny that when it first came out, there was all these people just kind of snidely saying, nobody's ever going to buy that. And they've been sold out since like as soon as they came out. So it basically, devices like this, or like a modular rig or an Octatrack, or, you know, even a, you know, I don't know, a Polybrute or whatever, they're all worth it if they give you the thing that you need and if you can afford to get it. So it's not that it's, you know, there's nothing about this that says they're just ripping you off. Yeah, it's expensive. It's totally expensive, but I don't think that it's I don't think it's $1,000 machine being sold for $2,500. I think it's you know, it's a $2,500 machine, or, you know, $2,700 machine being sold for $2,700. So it is what it is. I think the price conversation just needs to be kind of put aside. If you can afford it and it does your thing, then it's worth it. If you can't afford it, or if it doesn't do your thing, then it's not worth it. And there's other options for you out there, just like there are for every other type of device, just like there is for every kind of machinery, you know, like, you know, your car, your whatever. It's the, you know, it just depends on what's worth it to you personally. What I want to talk about is whether or not, or how it functions and how I've been using it, and kind of what I've been liking and disliking about it, rather than going into the price. So that's why I wanted to kind of get the price thing out of the way. It is what it is. It costs $2,700. It's a lot of money. My first impression is that it is not a ripoff at that price, but it is expensive at that price. So it is what it is. So we'll drop it at that. We'll go through kind of some of the basics of it, and which you may have seen in other videos, but I want to talk through a little bit about how it is. And if you have any questions at all about anything with the TR-1000, please put them in the comments, in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer whatever questions I can, because I want to, I've seen two different kinds of videos out there. Tutorials that are going through function, like every single thing that they do. And I've seen a whole bunch of jam videos, but I haven't really seen any videos where we're talking about how it works and how you would use it, and, you know, kind of question and answer about functionality rather than spec sheet information and just live jams. So that's what I wanted to go over, since I wasn't seeing that out there. So first and foremost, like, obviously there's 10 tracks on here, but there's actually 14, because each of these first 4 tracks on here has, they're layered tracks. So you can put 2 different voices per track. One of the first questions that I had was, what voices can you layer? And the answer is any voices. So for example, you could have 2 different sample layers. You could have a analog 909 kick drum with a sample from whatever device you want to. You can layer 2 different analog engines on one track. So I saw a video the other day where they were taking like an analog 808, and they were layering it with an analog rim shot, so that you could have the rim shot be more of an intense attack to go along with the big boom of the 808. You can layer a 909 kick with an 808 kick, and you can have the punch of the 909 and the boom of the 808. Or you can go totally the other way, and you can layer, you know, a synth loop with an analog drum engine on it, like any of those things, which is really interesting with all of that. So That's for me one of the most exciting things. If you've watched these streams, you know that I've always been a huge fan of the analog rhythm, and that was one of the main reasons, still is one of the main reasons why the analog rhythm is amazing, is because you can layer an analog drum synth with a sample. And being able to layer those two things together means that you can create some really interesting sounds, and then you can resample and layer that with another analog engine, and then resample and layer that with another analog engine. You can do all of that as well with the TR. But in the analog rhythm, you can layer an analog engine and a sample. In this, you can layer a sample and a sample, an analog engine and an analog engine, a digital engine and a sample, an analog engine and a digital engine. So you can really layer anything you want on any of these first 4 tracks. And then those can be resampled and assigned anywhere. So they could be assigned to another track, and then you start with new layers, or they can be reassigned to one of those tracks and layered with something else, and you can continually develop your sounds. So that's a really super powerful just drum machine function of this that for me makes this really, really a super powerful drum machine. So I just want to check real quick to see if there's any questions. Let's see. Do you find the workflow better on the TR-1000 over the Rhythm? Yes, for a couple reasons. One that I just mentioned, where you can layer anything with anything, and the other thing is having the faders and this many assignable knobs is really, really, really handy. With the analog rhythm, you could layer, like I said, but you were limited to drum engine and synth and sample, where and you also didn't have the faders, so you would need to have a MIDI controller to control volume for that, and it took away a bit of the performability. Now this doesn't have the pads, obviously, so if you're a finger drummer, you're going to want to go analog rhythm or MPC. Or where with this, you've got kind of like the clicky buttons like you have on the Electron devices. Very different clicky buttons here than there are on the Electron devices, but same idea. They're not velocity sensitive, but you do have a mode where you can switch to a record mode that gives you 16 velocities, so then you can record in different velocities if you want to record those in manually. So there are options around that. But yeah, as far as the workflow goes, I like when I compare the Electron workflow to the workflow in the TR-1000, I like this workflow better than the analog rhythm for those things I just mentioned. But I like the workflow of the more modern Electron boxes more than this. So like Digitact, Digatone, and the twos of those, Syntact, just because you get more parameters on the screen, and you can go a bit deeper with the control over the individual sounds. So it's there's pluses and minuses. It's not. There's not a clear cut, this is the one versus this one. But I would say as far as a dedicated performance drum machine, this is great, because with the faders, being able to control the performance, not needing a separate MIDI controller for that is really super handy. All right, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too. Thanks for showing the TR-1000. Can't wait to hear your thoughts. Awesome. Watching from Dublin. Sweet. I would love to get to Dublin someday. Other than the airport. I've been through that airport a bunch of times, but I'd love to get there to hang out. 2 questions. Can it do jungle break slicing? And you said you sequenced your rumble bass in the past. How do you do that? Okay, yes. As far as like sequencing jungle breaks and slicing, yes, you can. There's a slice mode. You can assign those slices to different steps. You can chop up to 16 steps in a loop, and then you can assign those per step on the sequencer, so you can move that around, or you can play those in live as you're recording it. And so yeah, being able to chop up breaks for jungle, yeah, absolutely, it's great for that. Look at some of the stuff that Nadia was doing. If you on her video from the launch of that's kind of what they were doing a lot, was a lot of drum and bass and jungle breaks and that kind of stuff. Very, very good for that. And then being able to layer those things, taking that kind of chopped up and resequenced on one track, and then being able to layer that with all the different types of other engines is really very powerful. So yes, I would definitely say it excels at that. And I said that I sequenced my rumble bass in the past. How do you do that? So just to give you an example, I can show you that here. So here, I'll take the delay off this. So this is just the kick on this, on the A side of track 1. On the B side of track 1, I have kind of a subby bass sound. Right? And that's kind of like the rhythmic element of the rumble that I sequence separately on this, and then I can put those two together. That's one example of it. Now, being able to do that on separate tracks or on separate sides of the same track is really cool. The way I would generally do that is I would take my kick and have that be kind of my main element. So like being like the 4 on the floor element, like this one. So that's really kind of the kind of standard part of it. And then you can take, let's go to the B side of this, and then I can, add in, if I wanted it to be offbeat. And then you can do different velocities on these. So you can, rather than just trying to do it with a delay, you can do it with a sequence. So it gives you a little bit more control, and then you don't sequence that second sound, whether it's a bass or a kick or a low tom or whatever. You don't sequence it on the same hits as your main voice. So I would actually do something like this, which really gives me separation between those two. So instead of having something like a side chain, you just don't sequence it on the downbeats where you have something else, so it helps kind of keep it out of the way. Now the other way to do it is to do it just with a delay and reverb, and that's kind of the more standard way. And again, on this, being able to have a delay and reverb, I can add some reverb to this kick. And then dial in exactly how you want the delay to go. So a bunch of different ways to do that rumble, and that's just just in one track and kind of the most simple. If you really want to get into it, you can then say, okay, I want to use that exact same kick. I can filter it separately from the first one, so I can just take the low end, I can add a little bit of delay to it, and then I can sequence those things in rather than having it be part of the main thing that's just delayed. So a lot of different ways that you can do it. In other machines, you have no choice but to do it that way, and with this one, you have a whole bunch of different options. And then I also still have in my modular case the Ohmforce Bohm that has the groove module that's like basically the rumble module. So a lot of different ways to do that. I tend to not do a lot of rumbles. I do more like low bass or low tom rather than a rumble kick. But that's just a personal preference thing. So anyway, let's see what else we got here. Hello from Portland. What's going on, Portland? Glad you finally catch a live stream as well. It is well worth the asking price. Got mine a few days ago and sounds amazing. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's where the conversation is. It is not, in my opinion, it is not a ripoff. That doesn't mean that it's cheap. It is very expensive, but it's not a cheap thing being sold at an expensive price. It's an expensive thing being sold at an expensive price. So that's, yeah, it is what it is. I feel like the MC707 is about as close to a downsized TR-1000 as we have at present. Yeah, and it's like, I had an MC707 for a while and it is not even anything like this. Like, that has all of the Zencore synth engines. This doesn't have those. This has, you know, all of the analog stuff. It has way more capability as far as the sampling stuff goes, way more capability as far as the sequencer goes. The sequencer in this is really, really, really good. Being able to not only do things like parameter locking and recording in motion and modulation, being able to sequence both sides of the dual tracks independently from one another is really powerful. Yeah, being able to lock things per step is really important as well. So a totally different beast from the MC707. And as I mentioned earlier, from a workflow standpoint, not even in the same league. The MC707 is a super, in my opinion, super convoluted workflow. This workflow I have gotten along really, really well with, and I found it to be super intuitive. So very different. Let's see, is there a limit on the amount of layers you can create? So you can layer two sounds just like that. Slap on a sound, slap on another sound. But then you can resample that using the internal resampling, and then have that resampled sound become one of those two layers, and add something else and resample, and add something else and resample. You can keep doing that kind of infinitely. I assume it would degrade over time, but yeah, you could do that kind of as much as you wanted to. So adding those different layers, there's no limit to the number of times you can resample, but you can only have 2 layers per track. So you can't layer any deeper than that. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, Herbie, but I think that was it, if I'm not wrong. I'll just play around with my Roland TR6S for now with its 6 faders. Yeah, I mean, all of the Roland drum machines, the more modern ones with the faders, are super playable and handy. It just kind of depends on what else you want to do with it besides play, you know, besides the jamming part. So how much control do you want to have over each individual sound? How easy do you want that to control to be? How deep do you want it to be? How many different options of sounds do you want? So it's like, you know, that's what you pay for. It's not, you know, they didn't reinvent the wheel by putting faders on a drum machine. That's for sure. Let's see. Hey, what's going on? Happy New Year. Love your stuff. Do you think your courses can be beneficial for those more into laid back, chill out, ambient electronic, or are they more geared towards on the floor techno? There's definitely a techno lean, because that's what I do mostly, but they're non-genre specific. So what they're really about is about how to perform live, and how to improvise as you're performing live, and how to set up a rig that, no matter what kind of gear you want to use, whether it's modular or hardware or drum machines or groove boxes or an iPad or a Push 3 or whatever, using that gear, setting it up in such a way that it allows you to functionally improvise live, rather than getting lost and all of that. So a lot of it's about the methodology, the system to playing improvised electronic music live of any genre. So yeah, it's non-genre specific and non-gear specific. Let's see, I'm holding out to see if they revised the hardware boards due to issues with sync. I know there's a workaround firmware, but how are you finding the slave sync? So I saw Jeff's comments right at the beginning about that. Jeff, I would have yours checked out, because it sounds like you have a lemon, because I have not had any of the issues that you're having. So not sure exactly where that's coming from. As far as the MIDI sync stuff, for the first like 5 days that I had this, the MIDI sync was really, really off. It was very difficult, unless the TR-1000 was the master driving the sync. I like to have everything come from my Oxy One, and so having this follow the Oxy One was a nightmare at the beginning. I couldn't get it to sync. It was constantly off, and it was really difficult. They came out with an update to the firmware, and it wasn't, contrary to what you just mentioned here, it wasn't a workaround firmware. They just added a new function, which was the ability to go into, let's go to the menu here. Yeah, go to MIDI, and then we have the ability to, oh, it's not in this one, sorry. It's in project. See, I haven't been in there since. So you can go into the general settings in the project here, and you can decide how you want the tempo to come in. So I've got this coming in sync through MIDI, and then there's a sync delay. And this can go anywhere from, I think it goes down to -100, yeah. So it goes from -100 to +100. And I think that's milliseconds, I'm not sure, but it's, anyway, -100 to +100. And so you can basically dial in your MIDI sync. And what it really was, the issue that they were having was, it wasn't necessarily a sync issue, it was a lag issue of starting. And so it made it so that when it started, it would start either late or early, kind of depending on what device you were using. It wouldn't start early, I guess, but it would start late to differing degrees depending on what device you were using. What this allows you to do is to dial in that sync delay so that it starts right on time and it stays right in time. And you'll just set that at a certain amount depending on what the device is that your clock is coming from. So I have mine coming from the Oxy One. I tried a bunch of different settings with different things and found that having this at +8 milliseconds got me dead on. And ever since I adjusted that, I haven't had a single issue with MIDI sync. So it's one of those things where it's you will dial it in for whatever gear you're driving this with, and then that'll be it. That'll be the kind of end of your sync delay issues. So I have not had to change anything since I set that up. So just to address the MIDI sync thing, it was bad when it first came out for about 5 days. They updated the firmware, added in this capability, and now, for me, I haven't had a single issue with it in the last month. I haven't had it go out of sync one time in the last month. So it was one of those things that it needed to be fixed. It got fixed, and that was it. Also, to address another thing you had mentioned, Jeff, that you had freezes and dropouts. In a month of using this, basically a couple hours a day, every single day, I've yet to have one single freeze or dropout. So not sure what's going on with yours, but with this one, I haven't had a single issue at all with that. So on that, let's see. Love the Digitone 2. It's probably my favorite, most versatile, enjoyable electronic machine. I think it's amazing too. It's funny because I didn't like the one. I had the one and sold it because I just kind of got sick of the same FM sounds and only having 4 tracks and whatever. And then the Digitone 2 came out and I was like, all right, this is a totally new instrument, totally new thing, and I absolutely love it. It's amazing. So first of all, on that, how do you handle the sound gap when switching a kit, if you do switch kits? So no, I have not answered that yet. So that for me, when I said it was a 9.9 out of 10, that for me is the big drawback. So, sorry, I'm getting my chair rolled over the top of my headphones. Okay, so the kit changing thing is something they have to fix for live performance, particularly for my style of live performance. Now, the way I think I will use this once the kit thing gets set is I'm going to set up a certain number of the faders, probably 2/3 of the faders are going to be my favorite drum sounds that I will use all the time, my kind of foundational drum sounds. Then on the other third of the faders, I will swap out things like voices or percussion or loops or samples or synth lines or vocals or whatever. And once they make it so that you can swap kits in a functional way for performance, and I'll explain to you what that means in a second, then what I'll be able to do is when I switch from one kit to another, the drum sounds will be the same from one kit to another, so those foundational sounds. And so as long as I only have those foundational sounds playing, when I change kits, you won't hear it because it'll change from one kit that has them to another kit that has the same ones. So you won't hear that change up on the same sequence, right? Because you can change kits independent from patterns. And so that's what I want to do. Have a set pattern, change kits, and then those foundational drums will stay the same so you won't hear it, but then you'll have, 3 or 4 or 5 faders of new sounds that you can then sequence live and play live. The issue right now is when you change kits live, here, let me just save this where we are so I don't lose what I was messing with before. So now if you want to change kits live, so let's say we're playing like this and we want to change to another kit, but I'm on kit 1. Let's say I wanted to go to kit 4. I have to go through kits 2 and 3 to get there, and they're in like a preview mode. Right? So you can't go from 1 to 4. Now, if we were back on 1 and we wanted to go to 2, it jumps right to it. And you'll notice if you look at the playhead going by here, when I change from one to the other, there's no stutter or restart or anything like that. It keeps going. So that delay that they had at the beginning is no longer there, or at least not that I've encountered. But where you do run into an issue, and what I wish they would do is make it so that, let's say you held shift and then you scrolled to the one that you want to have be your next kit, then you just release shift and it would play that next one. It's not like that. So the only workaround that I found for this is if you wanted to have this, you would have to set up your kits down here in a way where you had them in order that you wanted to use them. So then you could just go from one to the next, to the next, to the next. And you wouldn't have any of those issues that we were just talking about before with jumping from one. So hopefully, I've heard some other people complaining about this as well. So hopefully Roland's listening. Should be a relatively easy thing to fix because it's just a matter of like having like an override to that kind of preview mode. And so they could either have it be a shift release thing, or they could have it be where you could scroll to whatever you want and then hit enter and have it then engage that new kit. So whichever they decide they want to do, doesn't really matter to me, but there needs to be a way to skip around between kits in order to have the workflow that I want. So that for me has been my biggest gripe and the thing that I think they need to fix the most as far as my personal workflow goes. But once they fix that, I'll be good. All right, so let's see. Is it worth it, really? For me personally, yes, 100%. I would, to get this, I would sell 2 other pieces of hardware, 2 other groove boxes to pay for this. So it's, because for me, it does so many things. I mean, this is multiple analog drum machines, digital drum machines, sampler, time stretching sampler, performance effects, performance tools, faders, which would replace a MIDI controller. So it would replace a ton of those things. So yeah, for me, it's totally worth it. But may not be for you, because those might not be things that are important to you. And that's where I was saying before, is the only way to say whether or not it's worth it is if it meets your particular use case needs. And if it doesn't, it's not worth it. You shouldn't get it. All right, let's see. I guess it has a few more features than the 606. Yeah, a couple, but that's okay. See you soon in LA. I can't wait. I saw that you're playing right before me. By the way, Adam from Board Brain, if you're a big fan of the Board Brain mixers like I am, this is Adam from Board Brain in the chat here. So awesome. Cannot wait to hang out with you guys in LA. Let's see. Hi from Cobham, Surrey, UK. Hello, hello. My TR-1000 had to have it at 40 milliseconds on the sync delay with my other synths. Yeah, and that's why they did it the way they did it, which I think for me, at first I was like, why did they do it this way? Why didn't they just fix it? And then when I realized and started hearing other people talking about how their settings were different, I think that this is kind of a genius fix, because it's not attempting to be a one size fits all, rewrite the software for all use cases. It's put in a way to adjust it so that no matter what you're using, maybe you're using some crappy old sequencer that has some ridiculous amount of delay, or maybe you've got a 50-foot long MIDI cable that's creating, so you want to adjust it differently. And I think it's great to be able to dial it in for your use case. I'm driving everything always from the Oxy 1, and so for me, I just set it up to go from the Oxy 1. Great. And then I'm done. I don't have to do anything else. And if you're not using the Oxy 1, your setup's going to be different, but then you can set it up and you're good. So yeah, I think it's awesome. Hi from Brighton. Can't wait. I want to go to Brighton soon. I want to go to I keep seeing like the music scene in Brighton looks amazing. One Slave, how do you get rid of the first drunken kick? You don't, honestly. It's just like if you're using a DAW, just like if you're using anything else, when you're starting up something like that, there can be those issues, but generally you're not, because it's in sync from that moment. And I mean, how often, at least for me personally, never, that I'm playing where I need to start from zero and have the first kick be a thing. What I generally do when I'm playing is I will step up to play and I'll hit play and everything's going, and then I'll start into my show. I'll start to bring in sounds and bring in instruments and do all of that stuff. But I never start from zero. Where that can be an issue is in production, and if you're trying to record something and you want it from that very first step, what you may end up needing to do is to go in and adjust that first kick, or put a little bit of space before you start other things, just to kind of let it get started. But that's really, for me, the only instance where that would be an issue. In live performance, I never need that first kick. So for me, that hasn't been a thing. I would think it would not degrade, but get mucked up by having numerous overlapping frequencies. As far as the resampling stuff. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that every time you resample, kind of depending on the bit rate, it's going to be slightly different quality than it was the very first time around. So, if you ended up resampling something 100 times, you're going to end up with a degraded sample signal. But sometimes you want that kind of grit and crunch can sound kind of cool. So, so you have so many synths in your setup. What's the best way to sidechain them to the kick from the TR-1000? So it kind of depends on what the rest of the setup is. So for example, in my setup, let me see if I can change views here. I have to take my face off this so you can see. So with my modular setup, everything that's in the modular case is coming into the Board Brain Exelon mixer, and then the master's going out into the performer of the Ohmforce Bohm, and then back into my outer my on the way out end of chain. And what the Bohm does is it takes care of that kind of side chaining of everything. And so I side chain that to this kick, not necessarily to this kick. Now I could, if I wanted to, sequence those two together. Sequence the TR from the Oxy and the Bohm, so it would end up being the same thing, but there's not a great solution for that. Another way that I've done sidechain before with the Exelon, because there is CV control over it, like each one of these channels is its own VCA, and there's CV control over that. So what I've done in the past is I have run I've put an inverted envelope signal into a multiple and then gone out to these different channels. So that envelope ducks the VCA per channel here. So I could take that signal from the output on the TR-1000. One of the cool things with the TR-1000 is that it has individual outputs per channel. So you can take audio out if you want to trigger something, if you have a way to do sidechain based on an audio trigger, or you can actually, in the setup, you can change that jack to be a trigger output. So you could send that trigger output to something else. So for example, in my particular setup, I could send the trigger output from my kick track that's sequenced in here into the Bohm to trigger that kick. So they're both triggering together, so I can kind of blend between the two, and that would make the side chain of the Bohm be triggered from the kick in the TR. So as with anything, there's so many different ways to do it. It just kind of depends on your own setup and what you want to sidechain and why too. Like, are you just trying to sidechain a bass out of the way? Well, then maybe you just want on that bass track, you just want to have the ability to duck that one channel. In this setup, it's having the ability to add like a sidechain pump as a performance effect to the whole mix. So because of that, there's so many different ways to do it, but those are some of the ways that I would do it. Now, there's a sidechain in the TR-1000, and I have a sidechain in my modular case. So I can have them both, they're not necessarily the same sidechain, but I can have them both following a similar trigger or the same trigger. So totally different ways to do the exact same thing. I can break anything. Nice. Well, it seems like you did, honestly, because I don't know what's up with yours, but you're having, I have not had any of the same issues that you're having, and you're having a lot of issues. So I would definitely have yours checked out. Let's see, just recently got a 1010 black box and was pleasantly surprised how amazing it is. I have to say, and I know Aaron and Steve and those guys at 1010 really well. I have to say, they, in my opinion, needs to do a better job of marketing all the different use cases for the black box and the blue box, both of which I have sitting right here on my desk, because there's this kind of like one view. And then when you actually start to dig into the devices, you're like, holy crap, this does all of these things, all of that. Like, I use the black box for time stretching because the black box and the Octatrack for me are the two best time stretching devices for live performance that I've used. And that just doesn't get talked about a lot. I mean, I use it to launch clips and loops. You can sample and use it as like a looper. You've got granular engine on it. You've got sequencers built in, multiple sequencers, built-in effects, multiple outputs, like crazy powerful, tiny little box. So I'm right with you. I think the 1010 black box is absolutely one of my favorite machines out there, and it's so widely used yet so totally underrated because people just never talk about it. And that's always kind of shocking to me. I think that they need some more info out there about all the cool stuff that it does, because it's an amazing device. I just saw recently a video with Stimming where his live set is 2 black boxes. And that was it with a mixer. Like, it's crazy. So anyway, I totally agree with you on the black box. All right, let's see. Would you recommend the TR-1000 over the Analog Rhythm MK2 in 2026? For me personally, I would. I sold my Analog Rhythm and got the TR-1000, and I do not regret that decision. Now, that said, there are use cases for the Analog Rhythm, and there are pluses to the Analog Rhythm, and I have actually toyed with the idea of someday down the road, when I'm kind of in a new place and stable with being able to put gear all in one room and I'm not trying to downsize, I might get an Analog Rhythm Mark I again, just to have the smaller size, portability, all that stuff. But yeah, for me, I had said for years the Analog Rhythm Mark II was my absolute favorite drum machine ever. The TR-1000 is now my absolute favorite drum machine, no matter what. The Analog Rhythm is number 2 still, but the TR-1000 is just a total other level on so many different levels. So yes, absolutely, I would say in 2026. Let's see, set track sync under general to layered gens. Not all tracks will solve the slave sync issues. Yeah, that's true. I forgot to mention that for Jeff. That's the other thing. So if you go into, under general, tempo sync MIDI, and then, where are we at here? Yeah, track sync. When you go down to that, you have the option of layered gens, all tracks. And if you put that on layered gens, that will, that also goes a long way to fixing your sync issues. So the good point, and I thank you for bringing that up because I totally forgot to mention that. If you do the layered gens thing first, then use the sync delay time to fine tune. But if you try to use just the sync delay and you've got it on the other setting, it's still going to be really difficult and kind of clunky. So yes, thank you for bringing that up. I totally appreciate that. Let's see, off topic, but curious. What inners are you using? I am using Sennheiser. I can't remember which model they are. They're not the super expensive ones. They're like, I think they were less than $100. I want to get some new ones, actually. I want to get the kind of higher end Sennheisers. I really love how these fit. That's been one of my favorite things about them. I love the isolation. So I think I'm just gonna, when I do finally upgrade these, I'm gonna upgrade to the next level of Sennheisers, I do believe, because I really like them a lot. Let's see, smart idea. I don't know what that was, but thanks. Let's see, what about jam factor? Can you see yourself playing for hours with the TR-1000 solely as your single instrument? This is an easy one for me to answer because I have played for hours, like gotten totally lost in this thing and just like jamming. And it's so fun and so easy and so usable. So yes, absolutely 100% jamming for hours and hours and hours. While changing things. That's the key. Like with the TR-8S, you get the playability and the jamability, but as soon as you kind of run out of ideas of what you're doing and it starts to sound the same, it's really difficult to go into something else unless you've pre-prepared a whole other configuration. And with this, I can just stay on one kit, jam, change this, change instruments, introduce this, change settings, change pattern lengths, and it's like, it's really, really fast and really jammable, 100%. So yes, 100% single instrument jam for hours. Is there a sort of sample pool like in Electron stuff? If so, how much sample slot per project? It's a good question. I don't think there is, if I'm not wrong. I think that you have all of your sampled, you've got 46 gigs of sample access. So if somebody else knows this, definitely put that in there. I haven't run into that because I haven't like gone deep into it. Yeah, there's not like a buffer memory, I don't believe. So correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, because I'm not 100% sure about that one. But I don't think there's a limit, a sample pool limit. And I know that I read something just recently or saw something online recently that said that the sample length limit was like 16 minutes or something crazy. So yeah. Anyway. Do you use the software app, and if so, what for? So I did at the beginning just because I wanted to see it and see how it works. I haven't needed it. I did watch the Loop Hop video on this machine when it first came out, and he mentioned that he was using it as a way to learn the machine because you get more of a visual look into the insides of the machine and what you're doing with like samples and things like that. I will say using it to load samples is the better way to load samples, because you can just kind of drag and drop folders in and it's much easier, where otherwise you have to load them onto a USB and then put the USB in and load them in, and it's kind of a clunky loading system. So if you just load directly from your computer, it's much easier. So that's what I would use it for and what I have used it for. But I thought I was going to need it after watching the Loop Hop video. I thought I was going to need the app in order to learn it, and I really didn't. It's super intuitive to pick up and learn. So that was it. Can't wait for LA. Me too. When are you playing in LA? We are playing. Adam, who's on here, and some other friends of ours are playing the SoCal Synth Society event on the Thursday night before at the, hold on, I'll tell you exactly where, because I have my email right here, all about it. Maybe not. Hold on. There's this other email. Here we go. It is at Tire Biter Brewery, 2502 South Figueroa, Los Angeles. And it'll be on Thursday, January 22nd. It goes from 6:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. Adam from BoardBrain is playing, Manuel from Oxy's playing, I'm playing, Jeremy Blake, Red Means Recording, Daniel Troberg from ASM, who was actually the guy who designed the Octatrack for Electron when he used to be with them. Yeah, whole bunch of other artists, but it's going to be fun. Really short little sets, but it's going to be fun to hear a whole bunch of different genres, different styles of music, see different gear setups and configurations. And I played this a couple years ago. It's a super fun event because all the nerds are in town for NAMM and Buchla and Friends. And so it's just a whole room full of gearheads, which is really fun, like my people. So I'm very excited for it. All right. Does this thing have internal synths? Kind of. So, I mean, yes, it has analog drum engines, synths, but it doesn't have any of the Zencore engines. That was one of the first questions I had. So none of the regular synth engines, but in the factory samples that it comes with waveforms, and they're already basically set up to be like single cycle looping waveforms. So you can put in a sawtooth and you can go in and you've got some control over the synth, but you're not going to be, you know, this isn't like a sound design synth device. But if you wanted to have like, you know, a sine wave to create a sub bass, absolutely. If you wanted to have a sawtooth and make a Reese bass, you can totally do that. If you wanted to do some, you know, simple little lead stuff, you can. It does not, and I would not be surprised if this didn't show up in a very soon firmware update, but it does not have a way to have any kind of chromatic playing scale on the buttons yet. It's really designed to be a drum machine. So hopefully at some point soon, they'll just be able to do like a per scale way to use the you know, you could have 16 steps, you could have 2 octave scale that you could use to play stuff in with those waveforms. So there's not an easy way to do that right now, and I think that it would be something that's just ripe for a firmware update. But it's not, I mean, I saw one of the Roland product specialists was doing a demo of this, and one of the things that he said when he was asked that similar question is he said, it's important to know that this is a drum machine that also does sampling, that also does some, some synth voice stuff, whatever, but it's a drum machine. Like, it's really made to be a drum machine. And so all the stuff is geared towards that. The other stuff is all just like a little bit of extras. So let's see, also curious why you chose Oxy as master clock and not the 1000. That more than anything, out of habit. And well, I would say a couple of different reasons. I've seen some issues with the Oxy taking clock and having it have these kind of weird glitches. I didn't want to have those issues pop up because I've never had a clock issue using it as the master. The other thing is the Oxy is already clocking my whole modular. So there's a lot more voices there. There's a lot more clock divisions and different things that are going on with that. So I didn't want to have an incoming clock that then had to be converted in order to go into the modular. So this way, the Oxy clocks the modular via CV, and it clocks the TR-1000 and the black box and any other devices that I use via MIDI. And I use the Oxy split so that it gives me a bunch of different MIDI paths so I don't have to daisy chain things together. And it's really super handy. So that's the main reason for me. That and, habit, like this is set up in a certain way so that if I was to take out the TR-1000, everything still runs the same. Then when I put the TR-1000 in, I just connect the MIDI cable and it still runs the same. And I don't have to change configurations and all that. So that's the main one. Hi from Switzerland. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. One of my favorite places in the world. Let's see, dude, that German guy lives by those things. What's his name? I love him, just can't place his name. Stimming, absolutely. Yeah, he's a big fan of the 1010 boxes for sure. Very curious about sound design options for kicks. I've always found Rhythm MK2 lacks some processing options. I tend to sound design using overbridge and resample. Your thoughts? I mean, I've heard that too. From a lot of people with the analog rhythm. Personally, I always loved the analog rhythm kicks. I mean, I thought it was amazing. You just had to, it was just a matter of, I mean, I would never even layer them. Those analog engines for me sounded amazing. And it was just, I think the key to those engines really, the key to the analog rhythm in general is the drive circuit in that thing, because it really changes everything, as it does here. I'll tell you, like, if I've got, try to clean this up a little. There we go. So just having like kind of a clean kick on this, hopefully you guys can hear this okay. As I turn up the drive circuit, like the master drive, the analog drive circuit, that's at 50%. And this can obviously go much farther. So if I turn it way up, it starts to distort, right? But getting this to 50%, and that's the main. So that's kind of like your master output saturation or drive or whatever you want to do, which fattens up the entire mix. Now, the other thing is there is the ability with the effects here to put a saturator or a drive per track. So on this one, I have a drive effect on this, and I can turn this up here because I've set this button or this knob to be the drive. So listen to this here. Right, so I can get a ton of drive out of that, and then I can also change my the saturator. and it's got input gain and output gain, as well as the sensitivity and then the overdrive. And so being able to have that per channel, so that you can add drive, you can overpower things. It's great when you're dealing with super low end stuff to be able to add in some drive and some distortion, so then you can hear it really well if you don't have really great low frequency response speakers. So being able to have that stuff per track and then also have it on the main to kind of master up your mix with saturation is awesome, and it makes it sound really great. I mean, really, really great. Especially when I turn it up. I've got some bigger speakers here that kind of replicate what you would have in a venue, and it sounds absolutely amazing. So, 100%. What genres do you think it excels at, and genres it doesn't do so well? Man, that's a good question, because I mean, obviously, techno and house, it's going to be amazing. With the ability to chop break beats, drum and bass, jungle, with the 808 stuff that's in here, hip hop, I mean, really anything that you would want a drum machine for, this will excel at, because it has all the things, right? It has all the drum machines. So I would say, yeah, really anything. Now, what would it not excel at? I don't know, things that you don't need a drum machine for. Like, I wouldn't use this to play ambient music, but whatever, ambient, it's not, I don't think it's for that. But really anything that's kind of drum based, 100%, this would be great for it. And there's so much diversity of sound and flexibility of sound design and being able to layer things and all of the different engines. I mean, this has a full 727 in it. So you could do like Latin percussion with this. Like you've got all the different drum machines that you could want. You can do, it's got like CR78, you could do like synthwave and whatever. So I think really any genre, it's going to be really, it is your drum machine for whatever you need a drum machine for. I really feel like it. I do think it's important to note too, this is not sponsored by Roland, so they don't have anything to do with me or this. I wish they did. I wish they gave this to me, but this is my own personal take of my own personal device. So don't, I'm not trying to like shill for you guys. Let's see, where are we at? Does it have an analog circuit per track or just the 4 analog tracks? Okay, so great question. It has all of the analog circuits from the 808, and it has almost all of the analog circuits from the 909. I think they didn't do the clav and a couple of others just because of space inside here. And those can be placed anywhere on any channel. So for example, if you wanted to have, like an 808 kick over here and an 808 clap here and a 909 kick here and a 909 tom here, you can place them anywhere you want. You can kind of mix and match. So any voice can be placed on any track. They can also be layered together with any voice. You can have 2 analog voices on the layered tracks, or 2 samples, or 2 digital, or a digital and analog, or an analog and a, it doesn't matter. Any combination of those. The only limitation, because they are analog circuits, the only limitation is when you're using the true analog voices, you can only have one instance of that voice somewhere, right? So you couldn't have, 14 analog 808 kicks. You can have 1 analog 808 kick and then 13 ACB 808 kicks. So you could then have 14 808 kicks, but only one of them would be the true analog one. And so that's really your only limitation. There's only 1 analog circuit for each analog voice, but it can be placed, or I don't want to say placed because you're not actually moving it. It can be routed to any channel or through any channel. So that's your limitation as far as the number of analog tracks. You can loop waveforms. Yes, absolutely. There is looping. Play with a keyboard? I believe so. There's a USB in. I haven't played that at all or seen anything about it, but I would assume so with the USB in. But that's one that I have not tried. FM engine 303 engine. Yeah, it's coming about. Yeah, I mean, maybe. Who knows? I would say yes, probably, but maybe not. I mean, it's not really necessarily set up to do that. And if it would make the workflow more convoluted, I would be against adding more functionality. Simple things that you could do, like having a way to do a keyboard mode with octaves and scales, that I think would be helpful. Adding in a whole bunch more engines, I don't necessarily think that this is the device for that, because you have samples, so you can already go down that road. And if you want a bunch of synth engines, you could just use other synths. This paired with a Diatone 2 with 16 tracks of amazing sounding voices would be, yeah. Oh, looks like I dropped you guys for a minute. There we go. Sorry, we're back. Yes, those are PA speakers that I have. If this cut out, I use those when I want to try to get a good sense of what something would sound like on a PA, but I don't really use them as monitors. I have my Atoms that I use for monitoring. And honestly, I do a lot of stuff in headphones too. So anyway, what about IRA connectivity? I mean, I don't think it has any of the specific IRA connectivity, like all those devices that worked together as that one setup. So I don't believe it has any of that connectivity. How many zombies can you kill with a TR-1000? It's an important number. I would say at least 1,000. It's a massively heavy steel and aluminum, well-built tank of a device. So yeah, you could definitely kill somebody with this. It is massive. It is not a super light portable thing. I've been looking for venue-like speakers for home. Any recommendations? I mean, it all depends on what's your budget and how venue-like you really want to be. But the reason why I use these is because being PA speakers, they're set up to have the response of like what a PA would, where studio monitors are set up to be flat and have a really flat studio response. These ones actually have adjustments, so you can boost low end, you can boost high end, and it's good to hear what it would sound like on a system that had overdriven subs or no subs, and so you can really change it around a lot. Where with studio monitors, they're going to be really flat so that you don't mistakenly change your mix. And then try to play it on a bigger system that has maybe a boosted low end, and it sounds horrible. So yeah, let's see. Basically, it's the new King. I think it took long enough. Could have made this 20 years ago. Yeah, maybe. But they didn't. So here we are. I think it's amazing. It's, I don't want to say worth the wait, because I don't think anybody who was waiting for a new Roland analog drum machine, I don't think there was anybody who was waiting for this. They didn't realize that they were going to come out with like this comprehensive a machine. They thought it was just going to be a new analog, instead of an 808 or a 909, it was just going to be the new analog drum machine. But instead, they really made this as a production tool, performance tool. It's kind of like your all-in-one, anything you want drum machine, as well as performer. I mean, I think it's pretty amazing. So anyway, all good now. Thank you, Erica. What are your thoughts on the knobs? I'm finding them a bit slippery, a little bit, and a tad close together. It's funny because they are close together, and they solved that by making them like cone-shaped, which at first I thought was weird. And then I started playing and I realized that it was because there's so many of them that if they were like, if the sides of the knobs were vertical, you'd be bumping into them all the time. So again, it was kind of a smart design choice. But yes, I think they're slippery too, but that's just me. My hands are always really dry. And so like dry on these like silicone knobs can be pretty slippery, but yeah, they are what they are. I don't think it'll change my opinion of the machine at all. Let's see now. If I knew it was coming, I would have started saving in 2010. Yeah, that's a good point. It's, knowing ahead of time would have been helpful for sure. Have you explored the drum engines on SH4D? They might be the same on TR-1000, but SH4S, you have 25 of them at the same, no analog though. Yeah, I mean, sure. And that's one of those things where, yes, you could also get whatever 7 Behringer RD9s for this. And then you've got 7 machines to carry with you that can all do analog, but none can sample, none can do ACB, none can do PCM, none can do layered samples. So it's like, it's just, you can always do a dollar to spec sheet spreadsheet and then have to place a value on things. For this one, being able to have something that is all in this box and it is your comprehensive go-to drum machine, I think it's amazing. So anyway, Jeff's gonna have a knob kit for sale as well. Are they cone shaped so you don't bump into them, or are they fat so that you bump into them? Let me know. Jeff does synth skins for those of you guys who missed it. Jeffrey, that's in the chat here. So if you want like an overlay for any of your devices, check out his stuff. They're very cool. He just started doing them for the TR-1000, and they're pretty sweet. So hopefully I'll get my hands on one at some point. But anyway, so what has this replaced in the rack for you? That's a great question, because when I first got it, I was like, okay, I want to jam on this. And the way I generally deal with stuff when I first get it is I want to play with it, figure out what it does, try to find all of the different ends of its world. Like how far can I push it in different directions? And then say, okay, now that I know all those things, now how will I use this? And I'm still at that point of, what do I want to do with this, with my rack? So like, for me, the best thing ultimately would be to use this for drums and then have a half-sized modular rack that, instead of having the full 2 boats, just have one boat so that I could take all the drums out. But then there's certain drums like the Ohmforce Bohm, which I really like. The TR-1000 does great sounding kicks for sure, but the Ohmforce does much more modern sounding kicks. So depending on the style of music that you're doing, that I like the Bohm a bit more from the kick side. So I would want to still keep that. And then how much of that do I keep for mixing and effects, and what voices do I then take out and sacrifice? So I'm not sure. And then using this just by itself is an option for sure. And then having a very small modular case just with a few voices, or having, a couple of desktop synths and this. So being able to do that, I think again, it's all going to come down to, do you need to travel? What kind of music are you playing? How long sets are you going to do? Do you improvise? Do you plan stuff in advance? All of those things will kind of decide the organization. So for me right now, because I'm just in my studio at home, I'm not taking anything out of the case for right now. But as I play with this more, I'm deciding what I'll use this for. Will I travel with the TR-1000? Will I not? And if I don't, then my modular case is going to still be what it is. And then, trying to figure out as well, do I want to have different types of setups? Because sometimes I don't want to use modular. Sometimes I want to use, desktop synths or the black box, or, my Electron machines or something like that. But then I run into the issues of, well, all my effects are in my case and my mixer's in my case and all of that stuff. So what do I do at that point? So as of right now, it is not replacing anything in my case. It is in addition to my case. And the only way that I would say that it would replace is if it allowed me to scale down to just one boat. And so, but if it was just a matter of like, I'm going to pull out these 5 voices, that doesn't really change anything for me. So as of right now, I'm keeping it the way it is. I used to use my case that I have right now with a Digitact on the side. So this definitely would take the place of the Digitact. Take the place of the Digitact and a MIDI controller that I would use to control it. And so, yeah, it's not a 1-for-1 because this is obviously much bigger, but yeah, that would definitely take that place. But as far as, you know, what it would take the place of in the case, nothing at the moment. One thing I have noticed though is that since I've been using the TR-1000 with my modular, I'm doing something that I've been wanting to do more of, which is focusing a lot on building tracks and building moods and live performances around drum groove, and then having subtle, fewer things on top of that. And that's really been a huge difference for me. So just to give you a little example of that. So like starting with building something just from here. So just to let you know, this right now that you're hearing, this is only the TR-1000 and one voice going pre-fader through a reverb. So this is what gives me the ability to say, okay, well, I've got all these different options of different things in my case that I can go to. So if I want to go to an individual voice, I can go to this individual voice. So that allows me to just do that just with a single voice with everything else coming from here. So I'll just go back to this as well, to the TR, so you can hear. I'm going to take out all of the kind of traditional drum things so you can hear the things that aren't traditional drums that are coming from this. So this is coming from two different tracks. One track that just has a sample playing on it. This one is, yeah, so this is just like an individual hit from kind of a lo-fi sample. And then on this one, we have two different samples. We have a wood block and an Asian bongo. And so if I go back to just those, so this is all just coming from this one track, and I can switch. Take the effects down a little bit. So you've got woodblock on one side, and then on the other side. And those are each sequenced individually. So then when you kind of blend that morph to the middle, you can get a blending of those two percussive elements. And those share a fader, obviously. They share a tune. But then they also share effects. And all that's coming from this single track that has two different layers, right? And then we'll bring in that other sample element that we had. And then, as I mentioned before, you have master filter as kind of a performance filter if you want to. And then you can bring back in your kick. And just to give you another quick thing too, just to show you how cool it is to be able to kind of mix and match things within this. So on my kick track, I have on the A side a hybrid kick from here, which is a sample. And on the B side, I have an 808. Then on this one, I have those two percussive elements that I showed you, the woodblock and the Asian bongo. Then on the low tom, there's a 909 low tom on one side and I can't know where this bongo is from. Yeah, just a bongo sample on the other side. Then on the high tom side, we have a 909 tom, and then a sample of another one, which this one is. So this is the sample that's on here, that's kind of like a synth stab industrial sounding sample. And then on the other side, I'll take off the delay and reverb so you can just kind of hear them by themselves. So you have a traditional tom, and this is tunable. And again, you can blend them. And then bring in the effects. And this one, you can see that this is only running on 8 steps. Something else they put in here that's really, that really makes it fast for performance is if you want to change your step length, you just hold last and then you decide where you want the last step to be. Then it goes to the rest of the pattern. And if you want it to shorten up, let's say you want it to be like polymetric in 5 steps, 4/7. So again, really easy to change up. So yeah. Delay that goes on forever and ever and ever. Cool. So anyway, just a little demo of like what it does and how I've been playing with it, which is a lot of fun. So anyway, let's see what we got on here. Where are we at? Website for synthskins. I'm sure Jeff can put that in there. Euclidean or pattern generator tool. No, this is a 909 808 style step sequencer, whatever. There's different ways to sequence it, but it's this is not a generative thing at all. This is your classic for sure. Although I will say there's different modes of the sequencers, so you can have it, ping pong, you can have it do random, you can have it do what's called drunk mode, where it kind of like staggers through a sequence, and those are a bit more random, but there's not any Euclidean as far as I know, at least not that I've found. Do you think doing remixes of other artists' songs is a good practice to enhance creativity for later when creating your own original tracks? I mean, what I would recommend, and again, it's different for everybody, like everybody learns differently, but one of the things that I recommend my students in my production course is, rather than trying to remix other tracks, I would say try to, like, if you listen to a track that you like and there's certain things that you like in it, try to replicate those on your own outside of that track, using synths, using sequences, using effects, using things like that. And chances are you won't, and you won't replicate it. And you don't necessarily really want to replicate it. You don't want to copy the other people, but the exercise of trying to replicate sounds that you hear will give you a kind of a push, a little map on ways that you can experiment with your own stuff and explore and find ways to make sounds. And through that, you're going to figure out how to use your own stuff better and how to write your own stuff better. So remixing for me is not a great practice because, that's kind of like saying, okay, well, I'm just going to get a bunch of loops from Splice, and I'm just going to like put them together in a different order and make a track. You're not really learning a lot other than maybe arrangement when you do that stuff. Where if you're trying to actually replicate sounds using synthesizers or using samplers or using effects or sequencers or whatever, you're actually developing your skill set for how to do those things rather than just how to rearrange stuff. So remixing, if you're going to be doing original stuff, sure, like original bits of it, but I think that trying to replicate stuff rather than trying to remix other artists is going to get you farther in your own production. So just my 2 cents. Let's see. Sliders. Nice. Colored trigger keys. Does anyone here use Bitwig? I'm sure there's a lot of people that use Bitwig. Very popular. Been messing around with Bitwig and I like the workflow interface so much more than FL Studio. Yes. Bitwig is very different from FL Studio. It's much more similar to Ableton because it's actually, Bitwig was started by a bunch of the people that started Ableton, or at least were with Ableton from the beginning. So they kind of expanded it out. So it's going to have more of an Ableton feel than an FL Studio feel. Let's see, noticed running at 12 o'clock, gaining elsewhere. Yeah, I mean, it's really, gain staging is really weird going through my rig right now because I have everything in my modular going into the input on the TR, the external in. So that's this volume fader right here. And then that's mixing with the stuff that's here, and that's going output into my main mixer, which is then coming into my cameras for this thing. So I was like playing around with it. And there's different gain levels per channel. You have a different gain for each channel on the TR. There's also a really cool thing that very well thought out for performance. It's nice to always have all the way up be a level that you know. And I know, like in my modular case, in my mixer here, I like to put faders all the way up and then adjust gain so that that's my kind of my normal all the time level is all the way up, because it's an easier level to find when you're performing. With this, what's really cool is like I can go through and I can set like all these different levels. And then if I go into the mixer mode, where is it? Anyway, I don't remember, but because I haven't been using this. But what you can do is you can say you want to normalize everything to these levels. So you can say, okay, this is my mix for this track. Then you can normalize that so that this level is represented by full. So you can say, these are the levels that I want, and it will say, are you sure? And you say yes. Then all the way up on all the faders are these levels. So it's kind of a cool thing for performance that they built into it. I don't know, they were thinking from a performance standpoint. Let's see, it's the few people here that are all about the high cost. There's an OG 909 on my local Craigslist for $5,300. Yeah, it's pretty normal. You go on Reverb, they're, you know, $4,000 to $7,000 for the OG drum machines. Did you ever try Strymon Night Sky for Reverb? I did. It's great. It's fantastic. It does sound good. I agree. This is wild. I'm signed up for the course tomorrow. Oh, awesome. And I've been using the TR-1000 with half modular rack. Well, there you go. You were meant to be in the course. I'm excited to have you in there. Looking forward to it. Where are we at? Sounds amazing. It is an addictive machine. It really is. I have to say, from the very first time I turned it on and just started playing around on it, it was super addictive. Like there's something about those classic 808, 909 sounds that they're just like, you know, those old school claps and kicks and rim shots and stuff sound amazing. But then to be able to combine it with all the modern sounds that you can do with it as well, it's pretty awesome. And you can load in 46 gigs of samples. So any drum sound you've ever wanted, whether it's a one shot or a breakbeat or a loop, or you can load in vocals, you can load in synth lines, you can load in stabs, you can load in whatever, and then sequence it all here. So it's pretty badass. Time to sell my soul to buy one. Yeah, it ain't cheap. Let's see. Yep, no Euclidean sequencing. Yeah, sequence length per track, which is cool. But and also those different sequencer or modes that I was talking about, so like ping pong or reverse or the drunk mode or random or things like that. So you do have a lot of options, but it's not Euclidean. Once you said that one way to deal with gas is to learn from things without wanting to buy them right away. Now I'm thinking about how I can achieve similar results with a Digitac 2 and MIDI controller. So, I mean, any of the, so Digitac, Digatone, any of those, you can do a fantastic drum sounds. Digitac, you could basically load in your classic 909 kits, your classic 808 kits, you can mix and match them, you can create that. And then with a MIDI controller, you still have the faders, you can still assign everything just like you can on here. So yes, you absolutely could replicate with what you have. And that was basically what I was doing before I got the TR-1000, was Digitac with a MIDI controller. And this kind of took the place of those two. I really enjoy the kind of feel and playability of this one. One thing the Digitac does not do well that this does is time stretch. So that would be a hard one. You would need something else that could time stretch, like the Black Box or the Octatrack, that could time stretch in order to be able to, if you wanted to do like vocals or something like that. But yeah, there's a lot that you could do with the Digitac with this. This has analog effects, analog drive. It has a lot of stuff per channel, like compressors and stuff. So there's things that you can't replicate, but there is a lot of stuff that you could replicate for sure, as far as the sound and the playability goes, for sure. Let's see, what else? Happy New Year. Oh, Jan, what's going on? Or Jan, I'll get your name right one of these times. Notice you didn't push faders to the top. Have you intentionally set the max levels higher? No, that's kind of the thing, is I left this the way it is because since I'm doing improvised music and I'm not kind of presetting things, I don't know the levels that I want. And so I just kind of leave them at 0 dB, so I'm not reducing down, or maybe I'll reduce down just so that they don't overdrive too much. And then I'll use the mixer to mix. And that's more the way that I play. For anybody who's seen me perform live or seen the way that I use like the Exelon mixer in my case, I play the mixer constantly. So this has a way so that you can normalize if you've got everything kind of preset with the way that you want levels to be for certain tracks, like I was mentioning before. So you can normalize everything to all the way up to have all those different levels that you want. But for me, I'm live mixing while I'm playing because it's improvised. So I don't know what's going to go with what and what levels I want where. And so if anytime you see me play live with my regular performance setup and with my Exelon mixer in my case, I'm constantly on it, right? I constantly have my hands on the mixer. Like the mixer for me is the most important tool. And so going over to this for drums, it's kind of like an extension of my mixer for all my other voices, where I'm going to be setting that stuff live and live level mixing, rather than just kind of presetting a level and just jamming it to that level, if that makes sense. So yeah, so you'll always see when I play, you'll always see mixers at different levels. But yep, that's me. Let's see what else. Hey Joe, just missed you for a second here. Where did that go? Hey, just want to say a big, oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's super nice. Thank you for enjoying the music. Struggling on the Digitone 2, it's your only drum to live perform with sound design, too tedious. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that you get something like the Digitone 2 or even the Digitakt is, well, Digitakt's a little different, but Digitone 2, you've got such deep sound engines and you've got 16 tracks and there's no faders, so you can only do one thing at a time. You can only do one level at a time, only set one. So there's a trade-off. It's much smaller because you don't have any of those faders, but without those faders, you need a MIDI controller so that you can control levels. And then you want to set some knobs on the MIDI controller to maybe control parameters that are on a menu or two, or on, and even if it's not on a menu, they're on different tracks. So let's say you want to adjust 2 different decays. You can't do that at the same time using just one of the Electron boxes without a controller, because you have to be on the decay page for that track in order to adjust the decay, or on the envelope page in order to adjust the decay. Whereas if you've got a MIDI controller set up, you can adjust at least 2 at once, like you can on something like this. And with faders, when you're adjusting volume, like being able to go into something like this, and I don't know if you noticed when I was playing, but there was a time when I was moving down like 4 or 5 faders at once and moving those to be able to move them together. And once you've got them set in relation to one another, to then be able to move those all in that same relation is really important to have faders. And so that's why, like for mixers, for example, like if I switch this over here, like mixers like the Exelon that I have here, it's very much the same thing. I have multiple faders on this that I will be able to control all at once, rather than having to go, if this was just a knob based, you can only do 1 or 2 at a time, where here I can do, 8 at a time, usually, without too much exaggeration. And so same thing with this. So for me, having faders on a performance mixer, whether it's a kind of a traditional mixer or whether it's on a drum machine, is really, really important, just to be able to do multiple things at once, so you're not limited in that way. Thanks for this vid. Only got in the mail last week. See how it looks like an Oxy there? I do. Curious how my external MIDI sequencer can work on, oops, just lost that, and with the TRs. Honestly, I'm not sequencing anything in the drum machine from the Oxy, just because the TR-1000 now has a really, really fantastic sequencer, where I can do more with it than I can with the Oxy. One of the things that I've found is that where the Oxy One excels as a sequencer is with anything that is melodic, because being able to set things to scale and a lot of the different types of sequencers, a lot of the performance things like the accumulators and things like that, those work really, really well with things that are melodic. So those are sequencing anything that's a melodic voice in my case, or tonal. Whereas drum sequencers, it's fine, but not being able to lock individual steps to things still makes the either an Electron sequencer or the TR-1000 sequencer more desirable for sequencing things that are internal in those devices, because you can lock things to individual steps, which is really hard to do with the Oxy. You'd have to set up CC messages to what you were planning to lock, and then it's a nightmare. So melodic stuff with the Oxy and drum and percussion stuff internally in those devices, for me. All right, let's see. Where are we at? You see an example of looping function. To be honest, I don't have anything set up that I could do that on, but let me just check and see. Yeah, so actually it might work better on this one. So with this one, if I was to just play this, that's just hitting that one step, but then I can turn loop to forward. and I can shorten up where the end point is. And that's only coming off that one step. So that's set up with looping to be forward. I can do loop ping pong. And I can set it up as playthrough. What's interesting with the playthrough one is that is a function where the looping mode, sorry, I drove over my earphones again here. Oh man, what a mess. There we go. Kind of, yeah, there we go. Now I can come back to here. Sorry, keep going back and forth over these with my chair. So the playthrough, what's interesting with the playthrough is that normally it will reset every time it hits the trigger. And what the playthrough does is, like, let's say you've got a longer loop, it'll trigger on the step that you put a trigger on, and then it will play through all the way to the end of that sample, even if the sequence repeats, and then it will trigger again the next time that trigger happens after the end of the sample. And so what's cool is if you want to do something like a non-grid-based looping sample, like an atmosphere or a spoken word thing or something that doesn't have to be on the grid, you can set it up in that trigger kind of pass-through loop mode, and then you just put a trigger on every single step. So no matter when it stops, like let's say it stops on step number 7 is the end of your sequence, on step 8 it will trigger again. And then let's say the next time through, that means it stops on 14. Well, on 15, it'll trigger again. And so it'll just keep looping and looping and looping without having to have like the exact length set and all of that stuff. So there's really cool stuff that you can do with the looping functions in it. They're not just kind of your basic stuff. Let's see, you're gonna go to any Denver area synth meetups again before you begin your travels? I don't know, actually. It kind of depends on schedule because we'll be moving in just over a month. And so lots to do before I move. So I'll try, we'll see. Digitone 2 might benefit from a 24 knob MIDI controller. Yeah, MIDI controllers for the electrons are key. I would say anytime you're using a Digitact or a Digitone, you want something with faders too, but that's just me. Will electrons strike back? Would be a shame not see a Rhythm 3. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea. I think that they're going in a different direction with the tone work. I think that with that architecture of the tone work now, it feels like the next thing, the next kind of flagship thing would be like a Mark III Octatrack, using some of the stuff of the tone work and the routability and the buses and all of that stuff. It feels like that's where that software platform is going, but I have no idea. Who knows? Who knows what these companies will do? I didn't see the Syntac coming when it came out, so anyway. Jan, exactly. I know. Sorry. Have you ever tried the 1010 Music Nano Box for drumming? Not really. I've played around with it a little bit just at the trade shows, but I just have so many other options that it just wasn't my thing. I've had the black box for so long that the Nano Box, it's like a way less powerful version of the black box, and it's only slightly smaller. So I just kind of stick with the black box because I love it. I'm a huge fan. Did some work on my big studio that I finished building right now. If my socket hole drilling. Nice. Sweet. Well, I hope to see it next time I'm in Berlin, which will hopefully be soon. The price is high on the TR. I would get the Octatrack together with the Rhythm. Sure. Yeah, you could get an Octatrack and an analog rhythm for about $600 or $700 more than the TR-1000. I mean, of course, you could get them used. Eventually, you'll be able to get a TR-1000 used. But your option right now is a new TR-1000. So if you compared that to a new Octatrack and a new rhythm, you're looking at Octatrack's 1,800, rhythms over 2 now, or right around 2. So 2,800, yeah, so basically about the same price for those two. But you're getting, you have a few things that it does better, and then a whole bunch of things that it doesn't do, so, or that they wouldn't do. So anyway, honestly, something really enjoy the struggle when playing TR-1000. Yeah, embrace the struggle. I'm an Electron fanboy as well. I love their stuff. I was very happy to see that Roland implemented a more Electron style workflow in this, because I'm a huge fan of the modern Electron workflow. And so this just had a lot more of that, with like parameter locking to different triggers and the way the screen works with the knobs and the different pages. Like it just made a lot of sense. From the very first time I turned this on, I was like, yep, that's exactly the way I would have done that. So anyway, the faders, Jesus, yeah. Hapax has a function called snapshot, where you keep changing things, then with one press, you go back to the snapshot. Yes, the TR has snapshots, 16 snapshots for by channel. So every single individual channel can have up to 16 snapshots of different parameter settings that you can play between. And I saw somebody doing a thing online with those where they had something that was tonal, and they set the snapshots to be different tunes so that they could play a bass line on their thing, and then they use that to record it in. So a lot of different things that you can do with snapshots. And then you also have the morph fader, which I honestly haven't taken time to set up very much, because it's not a huge thing for me, but it's cool that you can lock any parameter from any of these knobs to the morph fader, so that you can change between multiple settings, like a super duper duper macro while you're doing performance. And that has kind of almost scenes like an Octatrack. So you've got 16 different kind of scenes, if you want to call them, with the like different configurations on the morph fader. But what's really different from the Octatrack one, what still makes the Octatrack fader much better than this one, is the Octatrack you can assign an A scene and a B scene. This one is either on or off, depending what the scene is. So you go from 0 to the scene, and then back to 0, and then switch and back to another scene. So there's not a way to very latecomer. Imagine very latecomer. Imagine an Udo Super 6 with a TR-1000. Sure. If you're an Udo Super 6 person, like it goes back to what I was mentioning before, like whatever works good for you. You know, I would love to play the TR-1000 with like a Moog Labyrinth. Like that would be super fun, you know, just to be able to do stuff like that. Or, you know, something simple like the Black Box, or even an Octatrack. I also think a Toneberg would be really fun with this, because this can handle all the drum and percussion stuff. So I just think there's a lot of configuration options of what you could do with it. But I still think, and this is maybe my own personal preference bias, but I still think that this with a modular is kind of like the best of all the worlds. As with a modular, you get all of the hands-on knob per function. You can get a lot of different voices in a small amount of space, and then have all of your drums and percussion on this. But that's just me. That's what I like to do. So I think that's probably why I'm leaning towards that. But let's see. Where do you go to programs on, parameters on something like a Digitone 2 you like to map to MIDI? For me, for live performance, particularly in an improvised setting, I like things that can inject energy and tension into a performance. I like to have those kind of immediate control. So obviously things like filters are important, but also effect sends, delay, reverb effects. And then the other one for me that's a huge one is decay. So I like to be able to do stuff like so like if I have a hi-hat going like this, I like to be able to open it up and then close it back down again. So I like that kind of stuff. Also with synth voices. So like this is the BIA. Take all these effects up here. Take all the effects off of it. So if you have something like this when you're playing along, being able to have control over the decay and then shorten that back down. When you have that going through a reverb and with a kick, and then you want to do something like a breakdown to be able to add so you can get a ton of dynamics out of decay. Decay for me is like one of the best things for adding tension, adding chaos. When you combine decay with reverb and delay, it creates kind of this cluttered, chaotic thing that adds tension. And then when you tighten them back up to have them be short things that are really punchy, it's a great way to do drops. So whenever I'm mapping things to a MIDI controller, those are kind of the things I go to first. And then the other thing, if I'm using samples in particular, is tuning. So to be able to pitch those samples so that they fit with what I want to do, or to completely change them by changing the pitch. Kind of like what we were doing before when I had something like this, and then I change, and just changing the pitch. Or something like this. And then being able to So being able to have control over pitch and tune is a great way to be able to make things a lot more useful when you're playing with them. So yeah, let's see, I'll get this in the future. I think it would be a wise choice. Which device is the MIDI master clock? Oxy 1. Try using the Oxy as the master and it skipped quite a bit. When I switched to the TR, it works fine. We went through this a little bit earlier, but if you do the settings on the TR correctly, you'll never have it skip. You just have to set up in the main menu to have it do like the layered gens MIDI clock, and then you just set the offset of the MIDI device to whatever makes sense with the Oxy. So for me, it was at +8. Out of 100, so it was a very slight different thing. But with that, it has worked completely fine for the last month with no issues. So yeah, there were some issues at the beginning. Make sure you're on the most recent firmware too, because on the most recent firmware, which came out not too long after the device did, so you're probably on it, even, I would assume. But yeah, being able to go into the menu here. Yeah, if you go into menu and go to general on the track sync thing, if you go to layered gens, and then you've also got your, where is it? Yeah, sync delay, that's the other one. So for me, the sync delay on the Oxy is +8, and then it's works amazing. So anyway, yeah, 1.14. I actually think I'm only on 1.1. So maybe 1.14 I should go to. Let's see here. I don't know. see where I am in a little while. Maybe I need to update too. When did 1.14 come out? Maybe that was a new one that I'd missed. So anyway, what sequencer are you using most on the Oxy? So my, I have like 909 brain. So my mind thinks in this kind of like 16 steps always. So I tend to use the mono sequencers or the multis. So if I'm using something for multiple drums and percussion, I'll have it on one sequencer page and have it doing multiple lanes of 16 steps. But yeah, those are the ones. I don't really use any polyphonic voices in my case. So the chord and poly sequencers don't do me anything. And I find with the more kind of generative, interesting sequencers in the Oxy, they're fun for sound design and for messing around. But in live performance, I get lost with where I am in the sequencer because I'm not pre-preparing stuff. So I need to have it like as simple as possible laid out so that I can see what I'm doing. And so I can't really do that with a lot of those other ones in the Oxy. So that's why I use those. Where am I at? Menu, exit, menu. Oh, it's in utility, that's why. Oh, I'm on 1.13, so I missed the 1.14 update, so I will give that a try. Anyway, any other questions about this before we call it a day? Been on for a little bit here, so yeah. Happy to answer any other questions about the TR, about live setups, about the event out in LA, Buchla and Friends, NAMM, moving, gear, shows, any of that stuff. So if you've got questions, throw them in the chat. Otherwise we'll probably call it a day here. So anyway, that's my issue. I like the Deluge sequencer to toggle 16 steps and more modern 32-step resolution sequencing. Yep. How many tracks does the TR-1000 send by USB to a DAW? If I'm not wrong, it sends out every single track. I believe it's the 10. I don't think that it sends the layered tracks out as separate tracks. I think it sends the audio that's coming from each track. So I believe it sends 10 out via USB. So yes, that's why I use it with the TR. Got it. It's going to replace the black box for you? No. Black box is something different for me. The black box for me is for like loops and atmospheric stuff. I could, but I don't want to wait because the black box has 16 tracks. I don't want to waste a whole bunch of tracks for that on the TR. But the TR with the black box is quite a combination, actually. So, are you leaving America for good? That's kind of the plan. Yes. Yes. Also come play Boston sometime. I would love to come play Boston. Boston is one of my favorite cities. So I would love to. If you know any promoters in Boston that would like to have some good live techno, definitely send them my way because I would love to get out to Boston to play. Love that city. What's Buchla and Friends all about? Buchla and Friends is a kind of light version of Superbooth. So it's all the different, mostly modular, but also other types of hardware gear companies. It is the same weekend as NAMM in LA, but it's a separate event because NAMM kind of got away from the modular stuff, and Buchla and Friends is where they kind of all gathered. And so I think this year they have 90 different vendors displaying, so different companies. Everybody from, I know Boardbrain and Oxy will be there. I know 1010 will be there. I know Melbourne Instruments will be there for sure. I know that Boardbrain, let's see, Noise Engineering, who else? WMD, all of these companies will for sure be there. So if you're into the modular side of things or the hardware side of things, it's a really fun event. It's cool. You get to meet all the makers, the manufacturers of the stuff, and play around with everything, touch everything, see a lot of new stuff as well. a lot of companies like to unveil new products at either this event or NAMM or Superbooth or KnobCon. So it's a good chance to sometimes see prototypes or see new devices that are just getting launched like right then, and get a first chance to play with them. Which, you know, it's funny, a lot of times at these shows, I'll play with a new device and they'll say, yes, this is in stores today, and it's sold out by the end of the day. So you would not get a chance to play on it for maybe months, but at these shows, you get a chance to play on them and speak to the people who made them, so they can give you really cool walkthroughs and insight into what they do and all that kind of stuff. So definitely worth going to for sure. Let's see, something else good to know, you can send all the analog sounds out directly through the outs, bypassing the internal digitalness, if you didn't know. Yes, absolutely. Yes, I think, are we still talking about the TR-1000? If we are, I'm not sure which internal digitalness you're looking for. I think you're talking about maybe the digital effects. That you can bypass those. You can also bypass those internally, instead of going out the main, or instead of going through those and out the main if you don't want to use the effects. And then you can send out every single track on the TR-1000 has its own individual output on the back. So you can send those out to an external mixer. You can multi-track record, you know, into an audio interface if you don't want to use USB. You can send those out as effects, go through effects chains, you know, have their own sends, which is very, very cool as well. So yeah, it's a great thing to be able to do. What else? Leaving the Matrix. Yes, absolutely. Good time to get the fuck out of here. Yes. Thank you for the chat. Thank you guys for hanging out. Yes, we all need to move out. I do not have a Pulsar 23 now. I had one. I got one when they first came out. I actually got one on loan. Tried it. I did a video on my YouTube channel about it, and I liked it, but I didn't see myself ever using it live, and because it's just really it's a fiddly machine, which is amazing for sound design, amazing for studio work, amazing for kind of exploring sounds, but for kind of improvised live performance, really quick dialing things in, it's not the easiest. So yeah, it's sometimes those devices are not the best for my use case, even though they're amazing devices. And that's where, like, the TR-1000 for me is the exact opposite. It's one of those things that it really fits my use case because it's very immediate for doing things live on the fly in a performance. So that's what I love about it. Anyway, well, thank you guys very much. I appreciate you hanging out. I hope you got some information out of this. If you have any other questions about this or anything else, just feel free to put them in the comments of the video, and I try to answer as many of them as I can and try to get to all of them. Or feel free to reach out on Instagram as well, and happy to answer whatever questions I can. And if you're interested in the courses, there's a link to the courses down below, circlelive.com/courses. The January course starts tomorrow. The first course, the videos are already live and the group is already live that you can be part of. And then the video group calls via Zoom start tomorrow. And those are twice a week for 4 weeks. And it's a pretty intense course. And it's a great way to kind of get started for the new year. It'll make all the gear you have more functional, so you don't have to buy a bunch of new gear. That's kind of the way I like to look at it. So anyway, thank you guys very much. And I appreciate you guys tuning in and sticking through this to the end. And again, if you have any other questions, if you're going to be at Buchla and Friends the end of this month, come say hi. I will be hanging out with the board braiding guys, so definitely come say hey when you're out there. And yeah, I look forward to seeing some of you guys in person, maybe on the travels and maybe out in Buchla. But thank you guys very much. I appreciate you tuning in, and